Let's start with a completely over-the-top but totally justified statement. CSS transitions bring life to your web pages. And I mean that pretty literally. The WC group that's putting together the recommendation for CSS transitions, which, as of this recording, is at the working draft state, says that CSS transitions allow property changes in CSS values to occur smoothly over a specified duration. In other words, a CSS transition animates the change in a CSS property, like background color, and to animate is to give life. Therefore, CSS transitions bring a breath of life to your web pages. Basic transitions are pretty straightforward to code. Let's start with a simple example, a link's background color. Here we have a couple of CSS rules for an anchor tag that starts with an orange background color. When the user's mouse hovers over the link, the background color changes to blue. When you see this in action, it looks just like an off-on switch, pretty mechanical. To create a transition, you'll need to add, at a minimum, 2 CSS declarations to your initial state. First, let's identify the property we want to transition with the declaration transition property background. You'll recall that the W3C definition stated that the changes were to occur over a specified duration. So let's specify that duration by adding another declaration. Transition duration 1s. The S, of course, stands for seconds. And that's all you need to create a simple transition, which, as you can see in this demo, is much more graceful than the plain link hover. The key rule to remember is that transition declarations are always applied to the initial state. This allows you to work with any other triggering states, like focus or active. There are several other states you can apply, including a couple for form elements. So, what can be transitioned? The WC3 spec includes a list of almost 50 properties, everything from background color to z-index. As we all know, the W3 spec is one thing and actual browser support is often another. Are CSS transitions ready to be used? If you go to the excellent resource caniuse.com and filter for transitions, you'll see that almost all current browsers, with the notable exception of Internet Explorer, support transitions and have for quite some time. The best news is that IE 10 is slated to extend support for transitions as well. While the most up-to-date versions of these browsers support the CSS transition properties as specified, earlier versions relied on the same properties with vendor prefixes. So, in order to reach the widest possible browser audience, designers often include a series of vendor prefix declarations as well as the generic declaration, all with the same values. In addition to extending support as far back as possible, it also future-proofs the code so that any new browser supporting the feature as specified is covered. Finally, one last caveat. We're definitely out on the edge here. Although the transitions and their cousins transforms that I'll introduce later are working in many modern browsers, the W3C specifications are still evolving and may change at any point, as might browser implementation. During the development of this course, for example, I've definitely had the experience of a transition or transform working in one version of a browser only to be broken in the next.